Chapter 1. The Hook. There are buildings that feel like they remember things. Not in any poetic way. Not in the way people talk about old walls and history. I mean a colder kind of memory. The kind that settles into stairwells and doorframes and never really leaves, even after the paint dries. On the east side of Rotterdam, on a street that never makes the postcards, there was a 6-story block of apartments built in the late 70s. Concrete, narrow balconies, a hallway light that buzzed like an insect trapped behind glass. People came and went with grocery bags, bike helmets, wet umbrellas. They nodded. They complained about parking. They argued about who forgot to lock the basement door. It was ordinary enough that you could live there for years and never learn anyone's full name. A delivery driver might call out, "Package for 4B," and someone would take it without correcting him. The intercom buttons had labels that peeled at the corners. And every night, around 2:10 a.m., the elevator would groan as if it resented being asked to work at all. If you stood outside the building at night, you could hear the city breathe. Distant tires on wet asphalt, a tram bell, a laugh that echoes too long and then stops. Nothing about the place suggested tragedy. That was the problem. Because the people who lived there, accountants, students, a retired dock worker, a nurse who worked double shifts, were used to the idea that danger looked like something else. A shadow in an alley, a stranger's hands, a loud argument through thin walls. Danger in their minds arrived with sound and spectacle. But the truth is, some danger arrives quietly. It waits. It learns the rhythm of your hallway. It watches which neighbors take the stairs, which ones use the elevator, which ones smoke on the balcony at midnight. In apartment 4C lived a man named Adrian Keller. At least that is the name on the lease. Adrian was not the kind of person people describe with strong adjectives. He wasn't charming. He wasn't intimidating. He wasn't even weird, not in the way that gives you a story to tell at dinner. He was simply a present. A tall man, mid-30s. Hair kept too neat to be stylish. Clothing chosen for invisibility. Dark coat, gray scarf, plain shoes. The kind of man you could pass twice in the same week and still not be sure you'd seen him before. His neighbors knew a few fragments. He worked from home, or he claimed he did. He rarely had visitors. He took his trash out late, always late, and he did it with the careful patience of someone handling something fragile. He was polite in a way that felt rehearsed. The smile arrived at the correct moment, held for the correct length of time, and vanished cleanly. "Good evening," he would say, as if reading it off a card. "Good evening," people answered back, because that's what you do. The building had its usual small dramas. A broken washing machine in the basement. A dog that barked at footsteps. A couple in 2A who slammed doors like punctuation. A toddler in 5D who cried as if betrayal was a daily event. Adrian Keller was not part of those stories, until slowly he became part of a different one. It started with a smell. Not a dramatic, overwhelming stench. Not the kind that makes you gag in the hallway. It came in thin waves, like something that couldn't decide if it wanted to be noticed. A sour note in the air. A sweetness that didn't belong. It was easiest to detect when the weather changed. When rain warmed the concrete. When the building's heat kicked on for the first time in autumn. The odor would rise and then fade. And people would tell themselves it was the drains, or the trash room, or a dead rat under the stairwell. In older buildings, smells happen. That is the story everyone prefers. The nurse in 4D, Maya Hernandez, noticed it first. Nurses notice things. They smell what's off because they spend their lives measuring off in small, vital ways. Maya worked nights at Erasmus MC. She came home when most people were still asleep. Her body half in the hospital's fluorescent world, half in the dim hallway of her building. She would step out of the elevator and pause, not quite sure why her chest tightened. Once she held her breath until she reached her door. Then she laughed at herself, a soft sound meant to break the tension. "It's nothing," she told herself. "It's always nothing." A week later, she mentioned it to a neighbor on the stairs, a graduate student named Elias Park. "Do you ever smell something?" Maya asked. Elias shrugged. "The trash room? No, not trash." She searched for the right word and didn't find it. "Something old." Elias made a face. "Probably the pipes." This place is ancient. 70s isn't ancient, she said, but she smiled, because smiling keeps conversations from becoming problems. The smell continued. Sometimes faint, sometimes sharper. Never long enough to force action, always long enough to plant doubt. And doubt does something to people. It makes them watch. They begin to catalog details they used to ignore. The sound of footsteps above them. The timing of doors opening. The way a person's shadow crosses the frosted glass of the stairwell window. Maya began to notice Adrian Keller's routine. He left his apartment rarely. When he did, he carried a small bag that looked too heavy for its size. He did not use the elevator if someone else was inside. He would wait, politely, letting the doors close, and then take the stairs as if he preferred the exercise. When Maya saw him on the landing, he would nod, and for a moment his eyes would flick to her face with the precise attention of someone studying a photograph. Not hungry, not angry, just focused. Once, she asked him, "Do you know if the building management has done anything about the drains? There's an odor in the hallway sometimes." Adrian did not hesitate. "I haven't noticed," he said. His voice was calm, even like a man describing the weather. Maya watched him unlock his door. His key ring made no noise. It was as if he had chosen it for that purpose. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him gently. Not a slam, not a click of irritation, a careful, controlled closure. And the smell, for a second, seemed to concentrate near that door, like a thought you can't stop thinking. The building's caretaker was a part-time man named Graham Doyle. He patched plaster, changed light bulbs, shrugged at complaints. He had the patience of someone who had learned that most issues in a building were not emergencies, just inconveniences dressed up in anxious voices. When Maya finally told him, he sighed. "Smells travel," Graham said. "Could be someone cooking. Could be a spill in the bin room. I'll check." He did check. He sprayed disinfectant. He opened windows. He frowned at the drains. The smell returned anyway. And then one night something else happened. At 3:27 a.m., the elevator went up to the 4th floor. The security camera in the lobby caught the doors opening. A figure stepped out. But the hallway camera on the 4th floor, old and often glitching, did not record the rest. So what we have is a gap, a blank space where something moved. Maya did not see the elevator that night. She was asleep, finally, in the few hours she had between shifts. But she woke just before dawn to a sound she couldn't place. Not a scream, not a crash. A dragging noise. Soft, intermittent, like fabric across concrete. She lay there, wide-eyed in the dark, listening. The sound came again, then stopped. Silence returned, thick and unnatural, and she told herself it was a neighbor moving furniture, or a suitcase being pulled, or a dream still clinging to her ears. At 7:15 a.m., she opened her door. The hallway was empty. The air smelled faintly of bleach. Not the clean, sharp bleach of a freshly mopped floor. Something diluted. Something meant to erase. On the doormat outside 4C, there was nothing unusual. No stains. No footprints. No sign of anything. Just a plain mat with a small geometric pattern aligned neatly with the door. That neatness, Maya would later say, was what made her stomach turn. Because it felt like a decision. And then the building went back to normal. People left for work. Bikes clicked in the basement. A child laughed on the stairs. The couple in 2A argued about something small and endless. Adrian Keller did not leave his apartment that day. At least no one saw him. In the early evening, Maya came home again. She stood in the lobby and checked her phone. Another double shift tomorrow. Her life was a loop of tiredness and responsibility, the kind that makes you grateful for dull neighbors and predictable hallways. As she waited for the elevator, she heard the front door open behind her. A man entered carrying a flat cardboard box, the kind used for storage. He held it carefully, both hands under it, as if it contained something delicate and private. Maya glanced up. It was Adrian. He nodded, that practiced motion, and waited beside her, close enough that she could smell him. Soap, laundry detergent, and underneath that, something faint and wrong like sweetness caught in a closed room. The elevator arrived. The doors slid open. Adrian did not step in first. He gestured slightly, letting Maya enter ahead of him. Polite. Safe. Normal. Maya went in. The box was still in his hands. The doors closed. The elevator rose. And in that confined space, the smell grew stronger. For just a breath, for just a heartbeat, Maya's throat tightened. She stared at the indicator lights above the door, watching the numbers change, trying not to imagine what the box might hold. The elevator stopped on the 4th floor. The doors opened. Adrian stepped out, turned toward 4C, and walked down the hallway with the box balanced against his chest. Maya watched him go. Then she looked at his door, and she realized she had never once seen anyone cross that threshold except him. Not a friend, not a partner, not a delivery person. No laughter spilling out, no arguments, no music, only the soft, controlled sound of that door closing. As Maya unlocked her own apartment, she became aware of a thought that felt intrusive, almost cruel. What if it isn't the pipes? What if the building isn't old? What if something is being kept right there behind a door that no one opens? In a city full of people, it is easy to believe you are alone with your fears. That night, Maya lay in bed, listening to the building's usual noises. A distant faucet, a neighbor's television, the elevator sighing, and somewhere, perhaps only in her imagination, the faint scrape of something being moved across a floor. When morning came, she went to work and told no one. Because the most dangerous thing about a quiet building is how it teaches you to stay quiet too. And Adrian Keller, in apartment 4C, continued to be polite. Continued to be present. Continued to be invisible. For now, character count. No spaces. 9032. Continue to the next chapter. Chapter 2. Context and people. Before anyone suspected anything terrible, life inside the building followed a rhythm so familiar it felt permanent. Mornings began with the sound of doors opening and closing in sequence. Someone on the 5th floor always left at exactly 6:40 a.m. A neighbor on the 2nd floor reheated coffee twice because they forgot it the first time. The elevator groaned, paused, then groaned again, as if it needed encouragement to finish its job. This was not a place where people imagined secrets. The tenants were not friends, but they were something close to witnesses to one another's routines. They recognized coats, footsteps, silhouettes through frosted glass. They knew who worked nights, who smoked on balconies, who had a tendency to sing softly while unlocking their door. Normal life, stacked vertically. Maya Hernandez lived in 4D for nearly 3 years. She had moved in after her divorce, when silence felt safer than conversation. Her apartment was small but clean. A narrow kitchen, one window facing the street, a bedroom that stayed dark even in the afternoon. She liked the building because it didn't demand anything from her. No social gatherings, no forced friendliness, just a nod in the hallway and the mutual agreement not to ask questions. Her work at the hospital took most of her energy. She saw bodies every day, but not in the way people imagine. She saw vulnerability, skin that bruised easily, hands that trembled when they reached for water, faces that asked questions without speaking. When she came home, she wanted the opposite: predictability. The building gave her that. Elias Park lived 1 floor below her in 3B. He was a doctoral student in urban planning, which meant his life was organized around deadlines that never felt real and money that never felt sufficient. He worked from home often, his desk pushed against the window, stacks of books creating a narrow tunnel between the door and the rest of the apartment. Elias noticed patterns because his work required it. He tracked how cities failed and why people adapted. He noticed which neighbors left their bikes unlocked, which stairwell lights burned out first, which doors closed loudly and which ones didn't. He noticed Adrian Keller because Adrian did not fit any pattern Elias could categorize. Most people who worked from home had irregular schedules. They ordered takeout. They took phone calls on the balcony. They complained loudly about internet outages. Adrian did none of those things. He left at roughly the same time on the same days, always carrying the same black backpack. He returned without it, sometimes hours later, sometimes not until after midnight. Elias never heard him on the phone, never heard music, never heard the television. It was as if the apartment itself absorbed sound. On the first floor lived Margaret Lewis, a retired dock worker who had spent 40 years loading cargo ships until her knees refused to cooperate. She had moved into the building after her husband died, trading a house full of memories for an apartment that felt easier to manage. Margaret sat on the small bench outside the entrance every afternoon, weather permitting. She watched people come and go. She offered comments without expecting responses. "Rain again," she would say. "Looks cold. Someone keeps parking in my spot." People listened because it cost nothing. Margaret noticed Adrian because he always acknowledged her. Not everyone did. Some people walked past, headphones in, eyes forward. Adrian would slow, nod, and say, "Good afternoon," every time. Margaret liked that. Politeness mattered to her. It felt like proof that the world still followed rules. Once she asked him what he did for work. "Archival processing," he said. She nodded as if she understood. "Sounds important." "It's precise," Adrian replied. That answer satisfied her. The building's caretaker, Graham Doyle, had his own relationship with the place. He saw it as a list of tasks rather than a community. Leaks, broken tiles, complaints about noise that rarely matched reality. Graham had keys to every apartment, but he used them sparingly. People didn't like knowing someone could enter their space, even if they'd signed the paperwork. He had entered Adrian's apartment only once, months earlier, to inspect a water meter. He remembered it because it was unusually orderly, not tidy in a lived-in way. Controlled. The furniture was sparse. A couch with sharp lines, a dining table without scratches, no personal photographs on the walls, no bookshelves, no visible clutter. The air smelled clean. Too clean, Graham thought at the time, but he dismissed the idea. Some people liked minimalism. Some people didn't accumulate things. It wasn't suspicious. It was a preference. That was the story everyone told themselves. Adrian Keller had moved into 4C 4 years earlier. His application was unremarkable. Steady income. No criminal record. References that answered their phones and spoke politely. He paid his rent on time. He didn't complain. In a building like this, that made him ideal. What no one knew was where Adrian had lived before. Not because it was hidden, because no one had reason to ask. His previous addresses existed on paper, scattered across different cities. Short stays, clean exits, always leaving before anyone thought to wonder why. Adrian did not form attachments. He studied environments. He chose buildings that blended into their neighborhoods, not new enough to attract attention, not old enough to raise concerns. He preferred places where people minded their own business out of habit rather than distrust. He learned the sounds, how long the elevator doors stayed open, which floorboards creaked, how much noise a dropped object made before someone complained. He learned people. The nurse who worked nights and came home exhausted. The student who watched patterns but rarely acted on them. The old woman who liked politeness. Adrian understood that people trusted consistency. If you behave the same way long enough, you disappear. Inside 4C, life followed rules only Adrian understood. The living room remained empty of personality by design. Nothing there invited curiosity. Nothing suggested intimacy. The bedroom was kept pristine. The bed made each morning with hospital corners. The closet organized by color and fabric. The bathroom smelled of disinfectant. Behind a door at the end of a narrow hallway, one that most visitors would assume led to storage, was a space Adrian did not allow into the rest of his life. That door remained locked. He checked it each night before sleeping. Not because he feared intrusion, because rituals mattered. On the outside, Adrian's routine continued uninterrupted. He nodded at neighbors. He held doors. He waited his turn. The smells came and went, sometimes stronger, sometimes barely noticeable. People adapted. Maya began burning scented candles. She told herself it helped her relax after work. Lavender. Citrus. Anything sharp enough to mask what she couldn't explain. Elias mentioned the smell again during a chance encounter by the mailboxes. Maybe someone spilled something in the walls, he said. Maybe, Maya agreed. Margaret complained once to Graham. Smells like spoiled meat sometimes, she said bluntly. Graham promised to look into it. He didn't find anything, because he didn't look in the one place he hadn't been asked to. And why would he? Apartment 4C belonged to a quiet man with good manners. A man who said good afternoon. A man who recycled properly. A man whose door closed softly. The idea that something was wrong required a leap most people were unwilling to make. Normal life has weight. It presses down on suspicion until it flattens. Days passed. Weeks. Autumn deepened. The building settled into colder air and longer nights. And behind a door that no one opened, Adrian Keller continued his work. Carefully. Patiently. Convinced that he had chosen the perfect place to disappear in plain sight. Character count, no spaces. 18,147. Continue to the next chapter. Chapter 3. Escalation. In late October, the building changed in the way old buildings do, without announcement. The radiators clicked awake for the first time in months. Heat rose through pipes that hadn't carried it all summer, and every apartment developed its own small symphony of knocks and metallic sighs. Damp coats hung in hallways. Shoes took longer to dry. The stairwell smelled of wet concrete and cheap detergent. And beneath all of that, the other smell returned more often. It had started as a rumor of odor, something you could deny if you wanted to. Now it showed up in the same places, at the same times, like a schedule. Near 4C, most noticeable at night. Maya tried to treat it the way she treated everything stressful at the hospital. Identify it, control what she could, ignore what she couldn't. She opened her window even when the air was cold. She kept her own apartment spotless. She told herself that if something was wrong in the building, management would handle it. But management was not a person who walked the hallway. Management was a voicemail box. The first real escalation was not dramatic. It was bureaucratic. A letter appeared in everyone's mailbox, printed on thin paper, announcing that the building's pest control contract had been renewed. There would be inspection traps placed in the basement and in common areas. Tenants were asked not to disturb them. Graham had signed it. When Maya saw him changing a trap near the elevator, she asked, trying to sound casual, "Did someone complain about bugs?" Graham's mouth tightened, just slightly. "A few people mentioned flies." "Flies?" Maya repeated. "Probably coming in from outside," he said. "This time of year they look for warmth. It happens." He said it as if the conversation was finished. But Maya had not seen flies in her apartment. Not even one. She was the kind of person who noticed. She had done enough overnight charting with insects circling a hospital light to recognize when something was off. So she started watching. Not obsessively. Not like a detective. Just paying attention the way a tired mind does when it can't fully rest. One evening, she stood by her peephole and waited. She heard the elevator arrive. Heard the doors open. Heard one set of footsteps move down the hall. Adrian's footsteps. Slow. Even. No shuffle. No hurry. Then a pause at 4C. A soft click. The door opening. The door closing. Silence. And a moment later, the faint sound of plastic crinkling, muffled by walls. Like someone handling a bag. Maya stepped away from the peephole, heart beating faster than it needed to. She told herself she was imagining patterns because she was tired. Because she had seen too much. Because she needed a reason for the smell. 2 days later, she came home earlier than usual. The hospital had cut her shift short because a senior nurse had insisted she looked hollow. She didn't argue. She rode the tram through the rain and climbed the stairs to the 4th floor because the elevator was out of order again. Halfway up, she heard something in the stairwell above her. A thump, then another. Not loud, not violent, measured. Like something heavy being set down, adjusted, set down again. She froze, one hand on the railing, listening. A door opened on the 4th floor landing. Maya looked up and saw Adrian. He was holding a long, narrow package wrapped in brown paper, secured with tape. Too long to be a normal delivery, too awkward to be furniture. Adrian saw her instantly, and his face shifted into that practiced politeness. "Hello," he said. Maya managed. "Hi." He held the package against his chest as if to keep it from slipping. His hands were bare. His fingernails were trimmed close, almost aggressively neat. "Need help?" Maya heard herself ask. Adrian's eyes flicked down to the package and back up. "No, thank you." He said it with the same tone he would use to refuse a receipt. Then he moved past her, taking the last steps to the landing. He unlocked 4C without fumbling. The door opened just wide enough for him to slide the package inside. Maya caught a glimpse of his hallway. White walls, clean floor. Nothing out of place. And then the door closed. The smell in the stairwell intensified for a second, as if the air had been disturbed. Maya went into her own apartment and stood by her sink, staring at nothing, trying to slow her breathing. She had no proof of anything, just a feeling. And feelings, she knew, could ruin lives if you let them steer you. Still, that night she texted Elias. "Do you ever notice Keller bringing in weird packages?" Elias responded 10 minutes later. "Who?" 4C. Adrian? A pause. Then, yeah. Sometimes. Why? Maya stared at the phone. Her thumb hovered. "Because I think something is wrong," she wanted to write. Instead, she typed, "Just curious. Smell in hallway is worse." Elias replied, "I've noticed. Could be trash. Or something else." The words "something else" sat on her screen like an accusation. The next escalation came from Margaret. Margaret did not live in the world of subtle hints. If she thought something, she said it. That bluntness had been useful on the docks, and it made her a difficult neighbor to ignore. One afternoon, as Maya came home, she saw Margaret in the lobby talking to Graham. Margaret's face was red with irritation. "I'm telling you, it's coming from upstairs," Margaret said. "4th floor. And it's not the drains." Graham's shoulders rose and fell, tired. "Margaret, I've checked the drains." "Then check the people!" she snapped. Maya slowed her steps, listening without meaning to. Graham lowered his voice. "We can't accuse tenants because of a smell." "I'm not accusing," Margaret said. "I'm saying there's something wrong. And if you keep pretending there isn't, it'll become your problem." Graham looked at Maya and saw that she had heard. For a moment, embarrassment crossed his face, like a man caught avoiding responsibility. He cleared his throat. "We'll do another inspection. Basement, ventilation shafts, trash room. I'll see what I can do." Margaret muttered. "See what you can do. That's what everyone says." Maya went upstairs with her stomach tight. That evening, she heard the knock. Not on her door. On Adrian's. It was faint, a careful sound, like someone tapping rather than knocking. Maya froze in her kitchen, holding a glass of water. Another knock. A pause. Then Adrian's voice, muffled but clear enough through the wall. "Yes?" A second voice answered. Male. Older. Graham. "Inspection," Graham said. "We're checking the vents and meters. Just routine." There was a silence long enough that Maya felt it in her bones. Then Adrian said, "Now isn't a good time." Graham's voice, hesitant. "It'll take 5 minutes." Another pause. Then, "No," a simple word. Not angry, not defensive. Just final. Maya felt her mouth go dry. Graham tried again, softer. "People have complained about an odor. We need to rule out—" "I said no," Adrian replied. Maya waited for the argument that should follow. But Graham, after a moment, said, "All right. We'll schedule another time." Footsteps moved away down the hallway. Maya set her glass down and realized her hands were shaking. She told herself that refusing entry was legal. People had privacy rights. People could be sick, could be sleeping, could have anxiety, could have any number of reasons. But she also knew the instinct that rose in Graham's voice when he mentioned complaints. He had expected cooperation. He had not gotten it. And the finality of Adrian's refusal did not sound like inconvenience. It sounded like control. Over the next week, the building became a place of half-conversations. Maya heard neighbors whisper near the mailboxes. Elias stopped her on the stairs and asked, "Did you hear about the inspection?" Maya nodded. Elias leaned closer. "Keller didn't let him in." Maya tried to keep her voice steady. "Maybe he wasn't home." Elias shook his head. "He was. I heard him. He said no." They stood there in the stairwell, the light buzzing above them, both of them suddenly aware of how thin the walls were. "Should we do something?" Maya asked. Elias exhaled a long breath. "What can we do? Call the police because someone won't let the caretaker in?" Maya didn't answer, because she had the same thought, and it sounded ridiculous. The ridiculousness was the shield. It protected the ordinary world from the possibility of something extraordinary and horrific. Then came the parcel that changed the tone. It arrived on a Saturday afternoon, when the lobby was quiet and the rain came down hard enough to blur the streetlights into halos. The delivery driver buzzed several apartments before someone answered. Maya heard it through her intercom and ignored it. Elias, however, was expecting a package of books. He came downstairs and found the delivery driver holding a small cooler, the kind used to transport medical samples. "This yours?" the driver asked. Elias frowned. "No." The label was smeared, but the apartment number was clear. 4C. The driver shrugged. "Need a signature?" Elias hesitated. "He's upstairs." "I'll tell him." He took the cooler, feeling its weight. It was heavier than it looked. Cold seeped through the plastic handle. He carried it to the elevator. On the 4th floor, he walked to 4C and knocked. No answer. He knocked again, louder. Still nothing. The hallway smelled faintly of disinfectant and something sweet underneath. Elias stood there, holding the cooler, feeling foolish. He should leave it in the lobby. That would be normal. But normal had been slipping for days. He tried the door handle without thinking. It was locked. He stepped back, heart beating faster, and set the cooler gently on the floor. He pulled out his phone and texted Maya. "Weird delivery. Cooler for 4C. He isn't answering." Maya replied quickly. "Don't leave it outside. It could be meds or something." Elias stared at the cooler. He pictured vaccines, insulin, something urgent. He waited. 5 minutes. 10. At 12 minutes, Adrian's door opened. Not fully. Just enough to reveal Adrian's face and one shoulder. His eyes went immediately to the cooler. "You have something for me," Adrian said. It was not a question. Elias forced a smile. "Delivery came. Needed a signature. You weren't answering." Adrian's gaze moved to Elias's face. The politeness arrived late, like an afterthought. "Thank you. I was in the shower." Elias nodded, though Adrian's hair was dry, perfectly arranged. Adrian opened the door wider, and for a fraction of a second, Elias saw inside. A dark hallway. Clean white walls. And at the far end, another door closed. The air that leaked out was colder than it should have been, like air from a refrigerator. Elias's fingers tightened on the cooler handle. "Do you need—" "No," Adrian said, taking it with both hands. Their fingers touched briefly. Adrian's skin was cold. Not just cool from a shower. Cold. He pulled the cooler inside and closed the door with that same gentle finality. Elias stood there, staring at the wood grain, his pulse loud in his ears. He went downstairs and knocked on Maya's door. When she opened it, he looked pale. "I shouldn't have brought it up," he said. Maya frowned. "What happened?" Elias swallowed. His apartment was cold, not like air conditioning, cold like a storage room. Maya felt something sink in her chest. "Maybe he keeps the heat low." Elias shook his head, and his voice dropped. "No. It was cold coming out of the hallway. Like he's got a freezer inside." Maya's mind flashed to the hospital morgue, the way cold air hit your face when the door opened. She hated herself for thinking it. She hated the way her body recognized the idea. "What do we do?" Elias asked. Maya looked down the corridor toward 4C. The hallway light buzzed. The building made its usual noises, and somewhere very faintly, a fly tapped against a window, trapped, persistent. She whispered, "We pay attention. We document. We don't accuse without proof." Elias nodded, but his eyes were wide, because proof meant getting closer. And getting closer meant acknowledging what their instincts had been trying to protect them from. That whatever was behind Adrian Keller's door was not a private hobby. It was not a harmless secret. It was something that required cold air, disinfectant, and control. It was something the neighbors were beginning to circle without naming. Something heavy. Something final. Something that had been there the entire time, hidden by the politeness of a man who always said good evening. Character count, no spaces. 28,602. Continue to the next chapter. Chapter 4. The turning point. The night everything broke did not begin with urgency. It began with silence. The kind of silence that settles when people stop telling themselves stories. By November, the building no longer felt neutral. It felt watchful. Conversations shortened. Doors closed faster. People listened before stepping into the hallway. No one said Adrian Keller's name out loud anymore. They didn't need to. Maya stopped using the elevator at night. She told herself it was for exercise. She told herself it helped her sleep. In truth, she wanted the stairs because they let her hear what was above and below her. Elias began working from the university library instead of his apartment. He said it was for productivity. He said it helped him focus. He did not say that the smell made it hard to breathe. Margaret still sat outside in the afternoons, but she watched the entrance more closely now. She noticed when Adrian came and went. She noticed when he didn't. Graham postponed the second inspection twice. Once because of illness, once because of scheduling conflicts. By the third delay, the tenants stopped believing him. What forced the turning point was not courage. It was inevitability. On a Tuesday evening, just after 9 p.m., the power flickered. Lights dimmed. The elevator stalled between floors. Someone shouted in frustration. The building sighed as if relieved when the electricity returned. Except it didn't return everywhere. Apartment 4C went dark. Maya knew because she was standing in the hallway when it happened. She had stepped out to take her trash down, and when the lights flickered, she looked instinctively toward Adrian's door. The thin strip of light beneath it vanished. She stood there longer than she should have. When she came back up from the basement, the hallway lights were on again. The elevator hummed, unhappy but functional. But 4C remained dark. That night, the smell was stronger than it had ever been. Not drifting, not subtle. It clung to the air like something that had lost its container. Maya pressed a towel against the bottom of her door. She opened her window despite the cold. She sat on her bed, fully dressed, heart racing, trying to tell herself this was still nothing. At 11:42 p.m., she heard the sound again. Dragging. This time it did not stop. It moved slowly across the floor above her head, then toward the hallway. Then came a sound she had not heard before. A low, strained breath. Not a cry. Not speech. Effort. Maya stood, her body moving before her thoughts could catch up. She opened her door a crack. The hallway was dimmer than usual. One of the lights had not come back on after the flicker. Shadows pooled in the corners. Halfway down the corridor, near 4C, something large lay on the floor. At first, her mind refused to identify it. A bundle, wrapped in plastic, shaped wrong. The smell hit her full force now, unmistakable and undeniable. Maya's knees weakened. The bundle moved. Just slightly. A shift, as if gravity had changed. And then Adrian Keller stepped out of the darkness. He was not startled to see her. That was the moment Maya would replay again and again in the months that followed. If he had flinched, if he had cursed, if he had shown surprise, she might have clung to some version of normal. But he did none of those things. He looked at her the way one looks at an inconvenience. Maya, he said. He knew her name. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. You shouldn't be here, Adrian continued. His voice was calm, almost regretful. This is unsafe. Unsafe. The word landed with a weight that made her dizzy. What is that? She whispered, though her body already knew. Adrian followed her gaze to the bundle on the floor. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Not shame, not fear. Calculation. A problem, he said. Maya took a step back. Her heel hit the edge of her door frame. She screamed. The sound ripped out of her, raw and uncontrolled, echoing down the hallway. Doors opened. Lights flicked on. Footsteps. Adrian moved fast then, not toward her, toward the bundle. He grabbed it, dragging it back toward his apartment with sudden strength. The plastic tore just enough. Maya saw skin. Grayish. Waxen. Unmistakably human. Someone shouted her name. Elias. He came running up the stairs 2 at a time, breathless, panic written across his face. He skidded to a stop when he saw the hallway. When he saw the bundle. When he saw Adrian. Elias backed away slowly. What the hell is this? Adrian did not answer. He hauled the bundle inside 4C and slammed the door for the first time anyone could remember. The sound cracked through the building like a gunshot. Margaret's voice rose from below, sharp and furious. "What's going on up there?" Maya slid down the wall, her legs giving out. Elias knelt beside her, one hand on her shoulder, the other shaking as he pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police," he said. This time no one argued. The sirens arrived quickly. Too quickly, Maya thought, her mind fractured and drifting, as if they had already been on their way. Officers flooded the building. Neighbors crowded stairwells. Someone cried. Someone else vomited. Graham arrived breathless and pale, repeating, "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." The police knocked on Adrian's door. No answer. They knocked again. Still nothing. They forced entry. The smell hit them like a wall. Even the officers recoiled. Inside, the apartment was colder than anyone expected. Industrial units hummed along the walls, their steady drone the only sound. The living room was unchanged. Minimal. Clean. Controlled. The hallway led to the locked door at the end. The one no one had questioned. They broke that door too. What they found inside would later be described in reports with clinical language. Preserved remains. Multiple victims. Carefully treated. Catalogued. Not displayed. Not hidden in panic. Maintained. Some bodies were incomplete. Others altered. All of them unmistakably human. The room was a workshop. A storage space. A place where time had been slowed intentionally. Adrian Keller was not inside. They found him 2 hours later in a storage unit 3 kilometers away. Sitting. Waiting. Hands folded. Calm. He did not resist arrest. He did not ask for a lawyer immediately. He only said one thing. "They were safest with me." When Maya heard that sentence later, through layers of reporting and repetition, it made her physically ill. Because it reframed everything. The politeness. The control. The cold. Adrian had not been hiding in fear. He had been confident. Confident that no one would interrupt him. Confident that normal life would keep protecting him. And until the power flickered, until something slipped, it had. The turning point was not when the bodies were found. It was when the neighbors realized how close they had lived to deliberate, sustained horror. Not for a night, not for a moment. For years. Character count, no spaces. 38,941. Continue to the next chapter. Chapter 5. Fallout and discovery. The building did not empty all at once. People imagine scenes like this as a rush. Sirens shouting, neighbors fleeing with bags half-packed. But the truth unfolded more slowly, weighed down by disbelief. Police sealed the 4th floor first. Blue tape stretched across the stairwell like a warning line no one wanted to cross. Officers stood at both ends of the hallway, their faces set into expressions that suggested they had already seen too much that night. Maya sat in the back of an ambulance with a blanket around her shoulders she did not remember accepting. Her hands smelled faintly of bleach from the hospital, a cruel irony that made her stomach churn. Elias sat on the curb outside, head in his hands, repeating the same sentence to anyone who would listen. He said good afternoon to me. Every time. Margaret stood rigid near the entrance, refusing to sit, refusing to cry. Her jaw was set so tightly it looked painful. "I told them," she kept saying. "I told them something was wrong." Graham did not speak at all. He leaned against the brick wall, his keys clenched in his fist so hard they left marks in his palm. Every locked door in the building suddenly felt like an accusation. Inside 4C, investigators moved with careful precision. They documented everything. The lack of personal items. The industrial cooling units hidden behind false walls. The handwritten notes in neat, narrow script, each line documenting dates, measurements, preservation methods. This was not chaos. It was process. The room at the end of the hallway became the center of the investigation. Technicians photographed every surface. They collected fibers, samples, fingerprints. They worked in silence, broken only by murmured instructions and the low hum of machinery still running, still doing the job it had been designed to do. The remains were removed one by one, covered, labeled, handled with care that contrasted painfully with the way they had been taken. Authorities did not release the number of victims immediately. They never do. Numbers once spoken cannot be taken back. In the days that followed, the building became a place people pointed at from across the street. News vans arrived. Cameras lingered on balconies. Reporters spoke in hushed voices that suggested reverence while still feeding appetite. Neighbors stunned. Quiet building hides dark secret. Maya did not watch the coverage. She couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the bundle on the floor, the way it had moved, just slightly, like something refusing to be ignored. Elias was questioned for hours. He told them about the cooler, about the cold air, about the door at the end of the hallway. Each detail sounded worse out loud. Margaret gave her statement without sitting down. Her voice never shook. "I watched him," she said. "I watched him come and go, and I thought politeness meant safety." The investigators listened. They did not interrupt. They had already learned that Adrian Keller's politeness was not incidental. It was functional. His arrest revealed more questions than answers. He gave his real name without resistance. The name on the lease was an alias, one of many. Records began to connect. Short-term rentals, temporary jobs, cities where missing persons cases had never quite been resolved. The pattern emerged slowly, reluctantly, like a picture developing in bad light. Adrian Keller did not kill impulsively. He selected. He planned. He relocated before patterns could harden into suspicion. And always he chose places like this building. Places where people lived close enough to recognize each other, but not close enough to intrude. Psychologists brought in by the prosecution would later struggle to summarize him. Not because his actions were complex, but because his justifications were chillingly simple. He believed he was preserving, protecting. That death, once arrived, could be managed, controlled, stripped of its chaos. "They don't decay with me," he told one interviewer. "They don't disappear." There was no remorse in his voice, only certainty. The families of the victims began to arrive in the city. Some came with photographs clutched tightly to their chests. Some came alone. Some came angry. Some came hollow. Maya saw them once, gathered near the police station, and turned away. She could not bear the idea that she had shared walls with the reason for their grief. The building itself was evacuated indefinitely. Tenants were allowed back briefly, escorted, to retrieve essentials. Maya entered her apartment for the last time with an officer standing behind her. Everything looked the same. That was what broke her. She packed a single bag and left the rest behind. Elias moved out of the city altogether. Margaret relocated to be closer to her sister, leaving the bench outside the entrance empty for the first time in years. The building was eventually renovated. Walls repainted. Floors replaced. Units released. The listing made no mention of what had happened there. It never does. Months later, during pre-trial hearings, new evidence surfaced. Digital storage devices recovered from Adrian's other properties. Photographs. Logs. Correspondence that suggested he had been active longer than anyone initially believed. The confirmed victim count rose, then rose again. Each increase felt like a fresh wound. The prosecution avoided dramatic language. They didn't need it. The facts carried their own gravity. Throughout it all, Adrian Keller remained composed. He sat in court with the same posture he had used in the elevator. Hands folded, back straight, listening as if this were a lecture he had already mastered. When the judge asked if he understood the charges, he nodded once. Yes, no elaboration, no denial. For the neighbors, closure never really came. There was relief, yes, but relief sits uncomfortably beside guilt. The guilt of not acting sooner. The guilt of dismissing instinct. The guilt of normalcy. Maya returned to work, but she transferred departments. She avoided enclosed spaces. She avoided hallways without windows. She avoided people who were too polite, too controlled, too invisible. Sometimes, in the early hours of the morning, she still smelled disinfectant and felt her heart race. Elias wrote his dissertation about urban anonymity. He never published the chapter that mentioned 4C. Margaret stopped commenting on the weather. She said later that it felt pointless to talk about rain after learning what silence could hide. The fallout did not end with sentencing. It lingered. In dreams, in hesitation, in the way people began to listen harder in their own buildings. Because the most disturbing discovery was not what Adrian Keller had done. It was how little he had needed to hide it. Approximately 85% of the minimum 50,000 character limit, no spaces counted, has been used. Continue. Character count, no spaces. 45,896. Continue to the next chapter. Chapter 6. The ending. Years later, people would still ask the wrong questions. They would ask how no one noticed, how no one intervened, how something like that could exist alongside grocery lists and elevator small talk. The truth was quieter, harder to accept, because nothing about Adrian Keller required chaos. After the trial, after the sentencing, after the media moved on to newer horrors, the building returned to the city's background noise. Renovated, renumbered, rebranded by a property company that specialized in fresh starts. New tenants moved in without knowing what the walls had held. And those who had lived there learned something they never quite unlearned. That horror does not always announce itself. Adrian never shouted, never threatened, never raised suspicion through anger or excess. He did not frighten people into silence. He relied on their politeness, on their routines, on their reluctance to imagine the worst. The court ruled him competent. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. There was no dramatic outburst, no final statement meant to haunt. When asked if he wished to address the court, Adrian stood, adjusted his sleeves, and said only this: "I did what I believed was necessary." He sat down. That was all. Psychologists would later argue over terminology: control fixation, objectification disorder, extreme dissociation. None of the labels satisfied the families. None of them satisfied the neighbors, because labels imply distance, and distance was the one thing that had never existed. Maya moved to a smaller apartment on the edge of the city, one with wide windows and thin walls. She needed to hear other people living, cooking, arguing, laughing. Silence had become dangerous. Sometimes she still woke up before dawn, convinced she could hear something being dragged across the floor. She would sit up, heart racing, until the sound resolved into something harmless. A truck outside. A neighbor moving a chair, life reminding her it was still there. Elias never returned to Rotterdam. He told people he preferred quieter places now. What he meant was places where he could see the horizon. Margaret died 2 years later. At her funeral, her sister mentioned that Margaret had lost her taste for small talk. She said she learned too late that listening matters more than being polite. The case entered academic journals, criminal psychology courses, training seminars for property managers and law enforcement. It became an example, a warning, but examples fade. Warnings dull. What remained for those who had been there was something less teachable. They learned that normal life is not proof of safety. That familiarity can be camouflage. That danger does not always look dangerous. Sometimes it looks like a man holding the door. Sometimes it smells like disinfectant. Sometimes it lives quietly next to you while you make dinner and plan your week. The ending of this story does not offer resolution, because there was no moment when everything made sense, no revelation that tied every thread neatly together. There was only the understanding that Adrian Keller had not hidden his nature as well as everyone assumed. It had been visible in fragments, in routines, in cold air where warmth should have been, in refusals that were too final, in doors that never opened. The neighbors did not fail because they were careless. They failed because they were human, because they wanted to believe that politeness meant harmlessness, that quiet meant peace, that walls separated lives completely. They do not, and that is the discomfort that lingers, not the image of what was found, but the knowledge that it existed there the entire time, uninterrupted, maintained, waiting, and that somewhere, in some other building, in some other ordinary hallway, someone is closing a door softly, and no one is listening,